from the dark, tight and twisty nature of the Motegi circuit, we head to the penultimate round of the AMF GT Series Championship here at Sebring for the round number 11 of the championship, coincidentally the penultimate round of the season. Here on Apex Racing TV, my name's Scott Newton. As always, alongside me tonight is Daniel Leet, just waiting on Brad Link to join us in the commentary box within the next couple of minutes. But welcome, Dan. The penultimate round here at Sebring certainly opened up ourselves to a cracking end to the championship here.
Yeah, good evening, Scott, and all the viewers tuning in. Sebring is absolutely fantastic circuit. Second to last race of the championship, as you said. And for championship, it's put on so much already for these drivers. We're in for an absolutely spectacular night tonight. 45 minutes on the clock, one compulsory pit stop, and it's really open for anyone to keep fighting for this final championship.
Yeah, certainly. So, talking about the championship, going to bring up the championship standings really quickly. In the elite category, we have a really close battle between Steve Lattimore and Craig Edwards, only separated by 15 points at the conclusion of the last round at Montreal, which has putting up quite a surprise to everyone, as they're 1 and 2 here tonight on the grid. So we'll see how that plays out during the course of tonight's race. But Justin Wallace, not too far behind, still mathematically in reach of the championship, but about 170 points behind in the third position. Matt Morris sits in fourth on 3,904 points, and Timothy Phoeben from Mac 1 Esports, very strong, very consistent throughout the whole championship on 3,877 points.
Yeah, the whole top five of the elite class really not separated by a whole amount. I think Craig Edwards, Steve Lattimore really going to be fighting it out to that very end. But as you say, Justin Wallace not too far off, and realistically could be in with a shot.
Absolutely. In the pro category, we've got Dave Clements currently in the lead of that championship on 3,973 points. Brett Hender about 170 points behind in second on 3,802 points. Cody Bird in third. Kenneth Latter, very strong for him. He's very consistent, sits in fourth. And Pat Gallo on 3,370 points. In the AM Championship, we've got Lee Vandenberg on 4,009 points. Very comfortable lead, over 213 point lead over Jeremy Clark. Paul Wood sits in third. Nick Sanfilippo in fourth, and Steve Bartholomew on 3,310 points. And in the Rookie Championship, Martin Crisp currently leading that championship by 270 points over Jason Dolligan. Roy Clark in third. Ben Arthur and Alexander Newton rounding out the top five. So it's a pretty close battles between all of the championships, but certainly see how those battles fare between the two splits tonight.
Yeah, and with all the races coming to a closing end, it's going to be really key for all these drivers to try and get the maximum points available. Obviously, 2 races left to go tonight at Sebring, and one more at Silverstone next week, both 45-minute races. So a lot of opportunity for these guys to really score those points and seal what they can do with the final run of the home on the championship.
Absolutely. We'll take you through the grid for tonight's penultimate round of the Aussie Mix and Fixed GT Series here at Sebring, and we've got Dominic Ferreras actually on the pole position, who got it in the last minute to put it on the pole position, so an excellent effort from him. He's on the pole position, and alongside him is Craig Edwards, second in the championship at the moment. Very strong position for him. Steve Lattimore, our championship leader at the moment, in third. Danny Davison fourth. Matt Morris in fifth. Lee Vandenberg, our highest amateur category driver. Justin Wallace in seventh. Michael Kirkham in eighth. Nathan Huppert in ninth, and rounding out the top 10 is Jeremy Clark. Timothy Phoeben in the 11th position. Stephen Varga in the 12th position. Eric Thorpe in 13th. Dave Miller 14th. Scotty Gamble in 15th. Troy Maguire 16th. Kenneth Latter a little bit further down than he would have potentially liked, but he sits in 17th. 18th is Brett Hender for Team Hyperdrive. Richard Hunter in 19th, and rounding out the top 20 is Chris Pellet. Martin Crisp in the 21st position, Neil Pearson in the 22nd position, Pat Gallo in 23rd, Michael Taliancic, new to the series here tonight, in 24th. Johannes Koch in the 25th position, Alex Court 26th, Dave Clements in the 27th, Aaron Specchio in 28th, Scotty Chambers, Martin Casey, and our race admins for tonight in the 31st through 33rd position. So 30 cars have taken the field and should be in for a cracking race here tonight as we welcome Brad Clink into the commentary box.
Yeah, hi guys. Little late to the party here tonight, but looking forward to it. Should be a good race, and plenty to play for these guys out here tonight too.
Yeah, definitely. As we watch the guys making their way around on the sliding lap. Brad, a little different for you tonight. Normally we traditionally see you out on the grid. Not able to make it tonight, but great to have your sort of expertise of the series jumping in and lending a hand tonight. Sebring, sorry, get it there eventually, is a very demanding track, especially the change from the old concrete runways through to the tarmac paved section. As someone who's been in the series quite a long way, how do you find the drivers are going to get the challenges out there tonight, and is there anything they can really need to look out for in getting the most out of these cars?
Yeah, the braking areas are the key around this track with the bumps, so I expect to see the Fords quite strong, as we've seen throughout the season. Some of the guys were also talking in the chat beforehand about the front end of the Ferrari perhaps feeling a little better here than it has at other tracks recently. So no surprise to see a couple of those guys up towards the front there as well. But it's a good mix. Got one of the Porsche guys up there in the top 6, and BMW as well. So all 4 marques represented up there. But yeah, I do expect these Ford drivers to be pretty strong under the brakes, which will bode well over the bumps around this track.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's going to be a really key part, watching the way they get the ride control under these cars. Before we take to the green, as the guys make their way down the Ullman Straight on the run into Sunset Bend, track conditions for tonight, 26 ambient, 29 degrees on track, so a little bit hotter out there for the cars tonight. Pretty humid, 38%, and a bit of a wind, which is probably going to pay a little bit of into this one later on. Wind blowing around 8 kilometres an hour at the moment, but certainly will impact these guys a bit as they run around the circuit.
Guys are formed up nice and neat here tonight, which is good to see. And Dominic takes control around Sunset Bend here. You can see the cars bouncing around there, and he's going quite early. Looks like he's got a good jump, and the lights are going green.
Yeah, great jump from Dominic there, opening up a bit of a gap. So run into turn 1. It's a very tricky run here on the concrete cold tyres. The cars are going to want to move around a lot. Everyone getting through too wide. A little bit further down, we see a couple of the retro liveries still getting around from last week at Montreal. Looks like Michael and Esports team continuing on their trend. One of the pure Pulse Racing cars going off wide though. We'll need to keep an eye on that car to see who that was going out wide, but that was not a great start on the run into turn.
I think that may have been Chris Pellet in the Porsche. Looked like he probably would have hit that wall on the outside quite hard too. You can still see him in the background there, so maybe not.
Yeah, hopefully no damage on that car as the guys work their way for the first time out of 7 on the run up through to turn 10 down into Cunningham. It's a pretty long run here with multiple opportunities to get the car turned in, tight braking. I think we're going to see some really good overtaking opportunities later on in this race as everyone here now settles down into single file action, and about halfway through lap 1, and only that one minor incident on the grid there for the Pulse Racing car. Everyone else seems to get through pretty well unscathed right now.
Yeah, quite well behaved. Really early to get everyone single file too, which was a bit of a surprise. So that's good. Bodes well for some good battles in the braking zones heading up over these next couple of laps.
Yeah, definitely. And we're seeing a good mix of cars up in towards the top 5 at the moment. Looks like all manufacturers currently represented in the Ferrari of Ferris out front. Edwards, Lattimore, and a couple of Fords, Morris in a Porsche, and Danny Davison coming around in the BMW. So all those Max represented well now at the moment. But Ferraris has had a fantastic first lap, 0.8 of a second lead over Craig Edwards as they come across the line to start lap 2. And he's really starting to open up a good gap now. The pace of that Ferrari opening lap, very, very nice.
Yeah, Edwards and Lattimore won't be wanting to let him get too far away early on, but Ferraris definitely determined to try and get that gap early. He's got it out to over a second, which is pretty much just out of slipstream advantage for the draft in these cars. So he'll be keen to try and keep it beyond that second if he can. See, the Porsche does, the Ford does close up a little bit in the braking area. It's definitely one of its strengths.
Yeah, Morris starting to come under a little bit of attack from Danny Davison. We are seeing that Eric Thorpe did go around in the Porsche on the exit of turn 1 as well. So that's a little unfortunate for him. He finds himself well down the order now in 22nd place. But Danny Davison probably been a name that's come on exceptionally strong throughout this championship, really starting to come on form. He's got Matt Morris ahead of him, Justin Wallace just behind, so he's in some very, very good company at the moment, and really starting to extract a lot out of this BMW in the late end of the championship.
Yeah, I believe he's coming off a pretty recent victory in the Epiroc series in that car as well, so obviously got a lot of confidence in the BMW, and he's looking like he's up for a fight for the top 5 again tonight.
Yeah, definitely. He's going to be one to keep an eye on later on in the race. We know from past races how good those BMWs are, so we'll keep an eye on that and see how he goes. We've got Kenneth Latta up on screen in the race on Oz for Ferrari there. He's got himself some nice little bit of company with Troy Maguire, Stephen Varga, and Dave Miller just behind as well. Dave sporting a bit of a different livery on his Porsche, which actually looks quite nice out there as well tonight, but he's got Steve Vandenberg, Stephen Varga, all over him in that Mark 1 Esports car.
And you can see another of the Mark 1 cars of BMW looking up the inside there. That's, might be Scotty Gamble in that car.
Yeah, this little train's dropped off the back of the pack now. They're scrapping over 12th, 13th, 11th, 12th, 13th at the moment. So they've opened up a little bit of a gap. Nathan Happett's, you can see a little further up, and Jeremy Clark actually starting to get away from this little battle. But Happett's down the outside into turn 7, not possibly going to get this move done. A little bit of hip and shoulder. He saves it. Luckily, that was a tough one there with Jeremy. Was it Jeremy Clark, I think it was, or it might have been Michael Kirkham?
Yeah, Kirkham.
Trying to put the move.
So the Mark 1 boys sort of ganging up on Happett's a little bit there from the looks of it, but they've made their way through and head down. Kirkham's going to try and bridge that 2-second gap up to Wallace if he can. I imagine Vandenberg will try and slot him behind. They'll just try and work together to get back up to that front group.
Yeah, definitely. And we're only 40 minutes still left on the clock, so 5 minutes in on this race tonight. And we're already seeing some pretty big gaps starting to open up throughout the length of the field. Obviously, Dominic Ferraris 1.6 seconds ahead of Craig Edwards now. Steve Varga and a few other guys a little further down the order probably than what we would expect, down in 15th right now. And they've got a lot of work to do if they want to get up towards the sharp end, but they're swamped by a lot of cars right now, and going to have to be careful of how they work their way through. See Dave Miller in that Redback racing car just ahead, and Kenneth Latta just in front of him in the Race on Oz car as well. But the other one you've got to keep an eye on behind, Neil Pearson in the BMW, not too far out of this one, and he'll be looking to make a move here very, very soon.
And Clements has just come into the lane in his Ferrari very early there, so not sure if that's early strategy to try and get out of traffic or if he's had some damage, but possibly a strategy call, because that's pretty much the end of lap 3 is when you're first allowed to pit in this series, so that's when the window opens. So be interested to keep an eye out on him, see how that shapes out for him.
Yeah, we'll keep an eye on that because I'm not seeing him effectively stop, so it could be a very short run down the lane. But tonight, for the drivers that do come in, one compulsory stop, and tyres are required all around on the car. So probably for me, a little early going on with 40 minutes still left on the clock. Those tyres are going to be very, very second-hand at the back end of this one. So we'll see how that works out. Going to be very, very interesting. But Matt Morris still got Danny Davison all over him. These guys are scrapping over 4th and 5th position. Justin Wallace just lurking behind in that race on his Porsche, and he's not really letting these guys go, just allowing them to fight it out. And Davison really coming on strong, applying that pressure, but we know how hard Matt Morris is to pass. Do you think there's any chance where you're looking a little bit stronger for Davison, maybe to get a run on him here as they run down the long Ulman Straight, potential into Sunset?
There's definitely potential for that move there. He needs to get a great exit out of Le Mans down the Ulman Straight here to make it happen, though. It didn't look like he quite got that exit that time. He gets a bit close around here, but you can see Wallace taking a tighter line on the entry. So it's a great set of sequence of corners. It's kind of a, I mean, it's one corner, but it's kind of like several chained together there, and there's so many different lines that you can take. It always makes for interesting viewing, seeing the guys' different approaches to that corner.
Yeah, absolutely. It's very interesting to see the way the guys really set it up and get a run out of here. Well, might be worth jumping on board. We'll keep a run here with Matt Morris, and we'll just look at, from a driver's eye point of view, just how they're negotiating around this circuit here as we go on board. You keep an eye on Danny Davison in the little mirror. Might even get a run into 7, but it's pretty tricky with these cars under brakes. We'll keep quiet and we'll just keep an eye on this one as Matt Morris takes us around Sebring International. As we see Matt Morris come across the line, clicks over lap 6. It's a pretty interesting run for these cars. You can see how stiffly sprung they are on the run through Sunset, as we see Martin Casey up on screen now for Pulse Racing Team, bringing his Porsche through, and Chris Pallett as well, just there as well. So those guys are working on it pretty well. They're down a little bit in the order tonight, probably where they want to be, down around the 22nd position at the moment. So a lot of work for these guys left to do as they run down into turn 1, and just behind there you can see Eric Thorne and a couple other guys a little further down, so plenty still to come on. But Chris Pallett coming back after his spin earlier on, and he's going to be one to keep an eye on as he works his way back through the field. But you can see him now with a bit over about 30 odd seconds to get back up, or 26 seconds, sorry, to get back up towards the point end of the race. So a long race left for him to get that done and dusted, but he's around some good competition at the moment, Brad.
Yeah, he's just having a look down the inside of the BMW there. Didn't quite have the overlap to make that move happen. It's only got a small amount of damage on the front of that car from his excursion earlier on. So I think that was quite fortunate. Would have been quite easy to reach the wall there with that off, but fortunately that wasn't the case, and he's able to fight on. While we were on board with Morris earlier, I noticed there was a change of position with Troy Maguire squeezing his way past Scott Gamble in that battle for around 10th, 11th. He's been able to get by the Ford and pull a little bit of a gap. You can see still got some pressure behind from Kenneth Latter in the race on Oz Ferrari as well. and there's a bit of a train behind them, so that midfield pack is still quite close, which is good to see. It'll be interesting to see how that all shapes out with the pit stops, if people decide to jump out of that queue to try and get some clean air.
Yeah, definitely. It'll be really interesting to see how these guys unfold as we see a few of the packs really starting to heat up now. It'll be interesting to see what these guys look to do to jump that, maybe put a short stop on and try an undercut, and whether they get anyone reacting straight away is going to be very, very interesting to see. So we've got Troy Maguire up on screen at the moment in the Porsche, currently sitting 10th, and a very solid run for him tonight. A little bit down off the back of Jeremy Clark and Nathan Happert's, but extending a little further ahead of Scotty Gamble and Canalata. So he's looking pretty comfortable in that 10th position at the moment. Still does have a stop as we see Jeremy Clark trying to hang tight with Nathan Happert's there. That was a move that Happert's tried a couple of laps ago to no avail, but gets it done here through 7. That's a bold move, and that'll promote him up into the 9th position now. So, 8th position. So that's a great run, and Clark not wanting to let it go, but just not quite close enough to get the crisscross done.
One thing that's been interesting to see, quite a few of the Mark 1 guys have been down the lane quite early in this race. We saw Clements quite early, and then a couple of the other drivers, Gallo on the previous lap. So not sure if that's something that they've discussed within the team, a different strategy that they're trying tonight, or not. If we do get a chance to chat to them afterwards, it'd be interesting to see what their approach was with that.
Yeah, definitely a little interesting form of tactics there. I'm sure. No doubt we'll hear about how that one was discussed later on, but interesting to see that they are taking that earlier option. You see here, Jeremy Clark still hasn't let go of Nathan Happert's. He's trying to move down the inside of Sunset. Got the car in nice. See which way this one unfolds. I think he's going to hold it there as they run a little bit wide. You see the BMW Happert's bouncing quite a lot there, and Clark gets that positional change done. That was a great move from him. And looks like Happert's actually jumped into the lane, so it was a really tight entry to get that car in. And see a couple more Mark 1 Esports cars by the looks. Scott Gamble and Stephen Varga jumping down the lane as well.
Yeah, that was a good demonstration of how that wider entry into Sunset is probably not the preferred option, with the really severe bumps there with that BMW. Interestingly, he had to cut back across the track and get into the lane there for his stop too, which probably made it a bit more awkward. We just saw one of the Racing Laws Ferraris in the background having a moment there. I think that might have been, was it Eric Thorpe? I'm not sure. Didn't quite catch who it was.
Yeah, I didn't see who that was. We'll keep an eye on that and watch later on. Martin Crisp up on screen doing a good job. Chris Pallett still in a mess of cars. He's got Aaron Specchio just in front of him, Martin Casey right behind. And these guys have been stuck together for the last couple of laps now, with no one really getting a gap on either one. Both drivers very, very closely covered. You see Justin Toucher frame, Alex Court and Ken Latta still fighting it out a little further up in front there.
Oh, and there's contact.
Yeah, it looked like one of the BMWs going over on the roof. We'll have to get a replay to check what happened there. That's a interesting one, but it did look like it's some extra damage through Specchio and Chris Pallett as well, copping a little bit more on the back of his.
Yeah, it looked like Pallett wasn't really sure which way to go there, and you've got to. Here we see, so it's Ladder on the outside. Looks like a little bit of net code involved there, but Court probably didn't realise that the Ladder had a bit of the overlap on the outside there.
Yeah, it's going to be a tough one for the race directors to ascertain blame on that one. I think a little bit hard for Ladder being on the outside there. Didn't really have enough racing room, but obviously that'll be something for race control and the stewarding to decide. Hopefully we'll get a result on that one. Brett Hender up on screen in the Hyperdrive car, now sitting in 10th at the moment. They're still running the retro livery from last week at Montreal, and the car's still looking very, very nice. And right behind him, you've got Richard Hender as well. So those guys looking very, very good.
So quite a few cars in the lane there again now. It looks like a couple of guys from Ladder at least involved in that incident. He decided to head in. Sometimes when you're involved in an incident like that, it's a good idea to jump in the lane if you haven't done your stop. Try to reset. Just calm yourself down for a moment. And
Yeah.
Pellet's having a look down the inside of Aaron here. Runs him a little wide. Still gives him room over the curb at the exit, but gets the move done. That was a good move.
Yeah, very forceful move there from Pallet. Specchio didn't make it easy for him though. Drove that car down the middle and tried to get it back down. Not going to get the run down into 10. He's a little far away from that, but right behind you got Aaron Specchio getting back involved. Actually, sorry, not Specchio. Nathan Happett's a little further behind there trying to get back involved. So these guys are still scrapping it out and coming on pretty strongly right now.
Yeah, things have settled down a little bit with a lot of the stops taking place. This is one of the closer battles at the moment. So looks like Morris might have been able to gain up on Lattimore a little bit in that battle up inside the top 5. You can see he's a bit closer than what we saw earlier. Davidson's still following along for the ride as well. So Lattimore perhaps struggling a little bit compared to what we're used to see. Edwards has been able to gain a couple seconds over him, and Ferraris has just consistently built that gap sort of a tenth at a time out the front. It's gone out to 4 seconds now.
Yeah, Ferris being very strong. We did catch him in another race earlier in the season. I think it was Barcelona there for the IMSA race, and he had a great run there and was able to get a lot of advantage in that Ferrari. And again, looking to be doing a similar thing tonight here at Sebring. We are 18 and a half minutes in, so still a long way left to go, and the drivers still do need to come down for their stop. But at the moment, he's really starting to increase that lead gap quite nicely at the moment. We see Matt Morris still got Danny Davison behind him as we cut up here to Dominic Ferris going around, running into turn 15 and 16 down into Le Mans. So that car looking quite nice. You see just Craig Edwards in the background there as well, coming through just to see how stiffly sprung those forwards are, and then Steve Lattimore, in the 3rd position. So those guys not too far behind, and then you've got from Lattimore, Morris, Danny Davison and Justin Wallace, all covered by a couple of seconds. You can see them all on frame there right now, and that goes all the way down to Troy Maguire, we saw right at the back frame coming to the Ullman Straight. So the top half dozen cars not too far away from each other. It's everyone down through 1st and 9th at the moment.
You've got the top 14 that haven't made stops so far. Was expecting to see a few peel off into the lane here on this lap, but we've decided against it. Not quite at the halfway mark of the race, so still plenty of time to make that stop. We do see Hendo in the BMW. He comes into the lane.
Yeah, not a bad time for Hendo to be coming in. Around the 20-minute mark is where we've traditionally seen. So we'll look to see where he feeds back out. One guy I wouldn't mind having a look in to catch up with is Michael Taliancic. His first race out on the field as well. Currently finds himself maybe a little further down than what he'd like to be at the moment. We know how good he is in the V8 supercar, trying his hand in the AMS Series in the BMWs. And he finds himself down in 23rd spot, or 25th spot at the moment, and has made that one stop already, so only can go forward from here, but probably not exactly where he wants to be right now.
And you see down the bottom there that Alex Court's day has gone from bad to worse there. He's got a 20-second time penalty going to be added post-race for that incident we saw earlier. Stewards having deemed not leaving room on the exit of that corner, and one of the Porsches has a little adventure on the inside of the corner there.
Yeah, I think that was Eric Thorpe having a little bit of a moment there in his Porsche, but kept it off the wall, so able to get back underway, and that'll be a nice easy spot there for Taliancic and the guys to move forward along. Taliancic got himself about 2.5 second gap to Neil Pearson just ahead in the 712 there for DPR. So a little bit of work for him still to do, but he's in some pretty good company at the moment. He's just got Johannes Koch just behind as well, starting to apply a little bit of pressure.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how Davidson shapes up. He's just popping in the lane now. He was kind of getting a little closer to Wallace there just before he came in, and we do expect to see the BMWs come on a bit stronger in the second half of the race. With the engine over the front, they tend not to suffer quite as much from understeer as some of the other cars, and it does help the tyres usually over the longer run.
Yeah, it's really been the strong suit for that BMW throughout the course of the season. Has been incredibly good on the tyres, and that's something that we'll keep an eye on later on in this race as that unfolds. Steve Lattimore starting to come under a little bit of a pressure now from Matt Morris behind. You can see the green Porsche of Morris there closing right up. This guys are scrapping over third and fourth. The gap only half a second between them, with Danny Davison obviously jumping out last time by for his stop. That's released the pressure on Morris a little bit, who now goes after Steve Lattimore. Down on the exit of 13. Both cars looking pretty good. You can see in the background Justin Wallace running quite wide there in the Porsche. That's down off turn 13. The guy's running down into 15 now, so about to start the run through Le Mans. And we'll keep an eye on the back here just to see how stiffly sprung the BMW is. Sorry, the Porsche seems to ride those curves a little better than what we're seeing out of the Fords.
Yeah, the Porsche can be a bit of a handful when you have the bumps under the braking area, but once you're out of the braking zone and you're rotating or rolling the car around the corner, it doesn't seem to mind the bumps quite as much in that phase of the corner. So it does carry some pretty decent mid-corner speed. You can see that first turn there's not a lot of braking there, so Porsche is able to close up quite well.
Yeah, the one thing I did notice from Morris there into one, running a little bit wider through a couple of corners, 1 and 3 especially, not quite getting the car pointed in on the apex, which is going to hurt the exit speed. As you can see, the gap opening up a little more down into 7, into the hairpin, but we'll watch that Porsche come right back in under brakes, both drivers getting the apex quite nicely. And I think the Ford maybe just getting a little bit more advantage on the acceleration out of the slow corners.
Yeah, the Porsche is usually quite strong in the exits with the weight over the rear axle, but for some reason at Sebring this week, it just seems like the front end is, you have to wait to get onto the power because there's quite a bit of understeer at this track with the Porsche, and I mean that can be a trait of the Porsche sometimes with the lighter front end, but just the limited laps I did this week just seemed to be a little exaggerated at this track. So it might be why you see Morris sort of running a little wider, maybe missing a couple of apexes and having to wait a little bit to get onto the power.
Yeah, definitely. And for all the viewers watching, maybe new to the series, who haven't seen it before, organisers put on a fixed setup for all cars, so they dictate the balance of performance, and does lead to some extremely good racing, which we've seen throughout the course of the championship so far. It's been absolutely phenomenal, and the work they put in behind to get the racing up where it is second to none. So big hats off to the series organisers for the continued effort that they put in to not only get the series to where it is, which has come on leaps and bounds over the time that we've been helping broadcast, and prior to that, but to keep the closeness of racing as tight as it is right now. Big tip of the hat to those guys. As we see a couple more guys coming in, Troy Maguire, I think, and Ken Hunter, or Richard Hunter, sorry, down the lane for his stop as well. So not a lot of cars left to come down the lane for their stop tonight.
Yeah, you can see Hender working away on the back of Crisp. He's starting to make inroads after that stop, and Pearson, the BMW there, also was hustling one of the Porsches. So it looks like the BMWs are starting to shine in the second half of the race.
Yeah, BMW's really starting to come on. As we see track conditions up at the moment, not a lot of change. Maybe the temperature gone down just a touch from 26 at the start of the race down to 25 degrees now. Track temperature coming down just a touch as well, down from 29 to 28. Still got a bit of wind out there. If anything, the wind's actually picked up It was around 8 to 10 kilometres early on at the start of the race. It's picked up now to about 18 to 20. So going to be a bit interesting to see if that does play any further issues with these drivers here tonight. You see local track temperature, local track time in sim, 20 to 8 as well. So the light's still fading for these drivers, and it's going to make it interesting to see whether we do get the headlights at the very back end of this one.
You can see Clements in the Ferrari behind these guys. He's closing up. He's pushing hard. He just had a bit of a moment through the first sector there. A little bit crossed up on over the curb on one of the exits, but gathered it back up. And after that earlier stop, he's trying to make his way forward. We see down the bottom, Morris comes into the lane from P4. So it'll be interesting to see where he files out in relation to Davidson. Ferrari's looking quite stable here.
Yeah, Ferrari looks really well planted down through Le Mans run out of 16. Very, very nice.
So pit lane's looking quite busy down the bottom there. We had, I think, the 10 or 11 cars that hadn't stopped, and looks like a good chunk of them have come in this lap. Hender looking down the inside through Sunset Bend. Chris takes it a little deeper, and looks like he still got a good run on the exit though. But Clement's closing up onto the back of them, so it's going to be a good three-way battle building up here in a moment.
Yeah, the two BMWs and the Ferrari there, not a lot between these guys at the moment. They are scrapping down over 12th, 13th and 14th. See Pat Gallo closing in. Oh, sorry, Dave Clements closing in on this little group with Hender and Chris. So this will be a nice little fight to see as they unfold 28 minutes into this race.
So just looking at the timing screen here, so Morris was able to come out in front of Davidson still as before, and the battle resumes with that gap just under a second. And they've got quite a large gap behind to Clark though now, about 8.5 seconds there, so it's a bit of clean air behind them. So, and looks like quite a gap in front too, so clean air for these two to fight in at the moment. But we've got the top 5 all in the lane. So we'll see how close these guys come out to Lattimore, because they were both closing on Lattimore before they made their stops.
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting to see as they unfold. Morris going around after his stop. You see quite a few cars in the lane. I think Morris is going to drop back in to the 4th position. You can see him going around Maguire and Kirkham exiting there. So that's not bad positional retainment for Morris there. Wallace did manage to close that gap up on to the back of Danny Davison, however. So that was a really solid stop for him.
Yeah, we didn't see Davison on the outlap. He might have had a little bit of traffic or something there, or either that or Wallace has just had a really good stint leading up to that stop and a great in-lap. Definitely closed up quite a bit. He had dropped off, I think, over a second off these guys before the pit stop cycle began, so that's a good net gain from Wallace there. He's able to put some pressure on Davidson here, which might be a comfort for Morris when he looks in the mirror and sees those guys starting to scrap out. You can probably just put eyes forward now and try and pull that gap.
Yeah, definitely. It'll be interesting to see whether Davison's able to bridge that gap. You see the pit stop strategy down on the bottom right off screen at the moment. Ferris still out front, yet to come down the lane for his stop. So the only driver, or only one of a couple of drivers at the moment, yet to come down the lane for their stop. So he's had quite a long run on this stint, but you can see positional gains at the moment. Morris up 1, Danny Davison did drop a spot from where they did start the race as well. And the big one at the moment, Troy Maguire coming on strong, up 7 spots from where he started as well.
I believe all the drivers did pit just on that last lap. I think it just takes a lap for that to update on the data there for us. Can see on the right hand side, Maguire has made 7 positions. So he's been the biggest gain of the guys inside the top 10. Clements is up 11. So he's been making some good work of that alternate strategy that he took earlier in the race. So far, he's got the most positions gained through the field.
Yeah, Maguire, again, putting on a fantastic run tonight. To be sitting up in the 9th spot at the moment, that's a great run for him as we still focus on this battle with Morris and Wallace. Not much in it at the moment. And so don't forget Danny Davison in there as well in the BMW. He's down the line. That's a big move down into...
Yeah, it's gone a little deep. Overcooked it's going to allow Wallace through. So maybe a little bit of frustration from Davidson there. Definitely didn't expect to see that move. I'm pretty sure Morris was caught by surprise there a little bit too. It was good awareness to pick up what was happening and to not turn in too early there. I think he just had to open up the steering a little bit once he realised what was happening.
Yeah, just jump to the replay here. You see Danny Davison extremely committed to throwing it down the inside there, tried getting in. Really not giving Morris much idea that he was going to take it in from that far back, and ultimately not quite able to get that car stopped and rotated enough, and you see him run wide there and dropping the position. So that's okay, he'll reset and get back underway. Still a bit of time left in this one tonight, but he has dropped down now about a second and a half off the back of Morris, so he's got a lot of work to do to get back up and fight with those two ahead of him.
Yeah, while these guys have been scrapping that out, Lattimore, after the stop, seems to be coming on a little stronger. He's closed the gap to Edwards, still just outside a second, or about a second, but earlier on that had blown out a little bit further, so perhaps he's looked after the tyres a little better, didn't want to take too much out of them earlier in the race, and trying to push on now to try and sort of stake his claim to that position 2 if he can do it. Obviously, all the points count at the tail end of the season. There's some close battles up the pointy end of the championship.
Yeah, definitely. These guys will really be wanting to work to get as many points in the bag as possible before the end of this one. Obviously, the conclusion of tonight's race, we go to the final round next week for another 45 minutes at Silverstone, which is a great race to see for there. And we did see it last time we were there, some really interesting strategies play out for the drivers. So still a lot to play out for. And our 2 championship main rivals at the moment, Edwards and Lattimore, still going after it pretty hard out front, or second and third, tonight, but still going out very hard for the remainder of this championship. And speaking of championship, a couple of sponsors that we must give a quick shout out and thanks to for helping continue to put this one on is Harvey Bay Autoglass and Race Management Services, rms55.com, for continued support and helping push this one through as always.
Things have settled down a little bit here. It might be worth just having a look at that battle back for P13 or so of Chris Hemder Clements. And I can see Maguire closing on that group as well. So Clements has been unable to get that move done since he caught up to the back of Hender. And Chris has been able to sort of withstand that pressure for quite a while now, ever since Hender did his pit stop. Sort of been within striking distance of the other BMW in front, but unable to make something happen, and he's just fallen away a little bit now with the pressure from Clements. Dave just goes a little deeper through Sunset there, gets out onto those harsher bumps, unsettles the car a little bit.
Yeah, he did very well to hold that car as it went through a big slide on the middle of turn 17 there, so great job from him. Does lose a little bit of time, and now it's going to be under all sorts of pressure there from Troy Maguire in the Porsche. Goes defensive down into 3, and we'll drop back to these guys here. Maguire just coming on really, really strong at the moment, up sitting where he qualified in the 16th spot. Mind you, has been a little bit further up as those pit stops cycle through, but he's in great striking distance on the run into 7 to get a move done here over Dave Clements down the inside. Thinks about it, not quite close enough, backs the car up, turns it in. These guys getting away nicely. Maybe a little bit of gap advantage there to Dave Clement on the exit. It's going to be able to hold it on the run down into turn 10. Another heavy braking zone for these guys to slow the cars down, as you see Clement likewise closing up on Hender as well. So not much between these three. I think they all show their different strengths and weaknesses throughout the course of the lap. And really interesting to see how strong Maguire is just as they start running in for the back portion of this lap.
Yeah, you can see just up ahead of these guys, Chris has sort of got that gap there, but just up in front of them we've got Kirkham trying to make his move on Scotty Gamble. I think Gamble's been fighting around that sort of 11th position most of the race and holding that pretty consistently, but he's starting to have to go defensive here. You can see trying to move to the inside, perhaps break the toe or force a move around the outside into Sunset. So Kirkham's having a look, trying to line up a switchback. Oh, and Gamble looks like he's taken a little bit too tight of a line and lost the rear of the car. So he won't be happy about that. That was a lot of pressure being applied there by Kirkham and perhaps a bit of commentator's curse there, unfortunately for Scott.
Yeah, in turn 17, probably the one corner of the track where you really don't want to loop a car, especially towards the inside of the course there. It's blind entry for everyone else coming around. I think we were able to see Scott get that car turned around without too much drama, so that was good awareness for him. But this battle here with Hender, Clements and Maguire really starting to shape up. Maguire trying to get something done at the back of frame there in the Porsche, but Dave Clement maybe just overdrove just a touch into 3, opened up the door again for Brett Hender to be able to escape. As you see Maguire again searching to get a bit more track advantage, not quite able to get it done just yet under brakes, but that's the second time now we've seen him throw that car up towards the inside and make his intent clear. So we'll keep an eye on that. A little further up the field, Justin Wallace is applying all sorts of pressure to the back of Matt Morris. Danny Davison likewise on the back of Wallace here as they run into 15. And nothing separating these guys. They're scrapping over the 4th, 5th and 6th position on track still. And this has been a fight between these guys that's been ongoing since the start of the race.
Yeah, things kind of settled down there for a little bit, but a lot of these guys are starting to bunch back up together, and Davison's trying to recover from that send that we saw earlier with the off-track. Obviously, he's still feeling quite confident in the front end of that BMW. These guys are all taking quite a tight line around Sunset Bend compared to some of the other drivers we've seen, so trying to avoid those harsher bumps out on the wider line. No one able to have a look in through turn 1 though, but this first sector is pretty much all about just getting a good exit out of this section here and trying to set something up down into the hairpin.
Yeah, in the mid corner or mid set of corners here through turns, basically from turn in through to 6 where they are here, really hard to get a pass done. We do see a few runs up into 3 if you can get a solid exit out of 1, but 7 probably going to be the key spot for a move. No one blinking. You just see Morris slowly bring the car over early just to defend that spot, but Danny Davison actually gaining a little bit on the back of Justin Wallace there, and actually might set himself up for a run into turn 10 here. Maybe just dropped off a little bit through the S's, not quite going to get it, but these guys are so equally matched right now. I'm not sure where we're going to see a pass between any of them.
Yeah. Oh, Morris using all the track there, but Wallace looks like he is struggling to get the front end into the apex, and you can see there again, and he has a moment on the exit, so that's made life easier for Davidson. Yeah, that was one of the apexes there, he just didn't quite get there, and then the car continued rotating on the exit. I don't think there was any contact that caused that. I think that was just the pressure from Davidson behind.
Yeah, we'll jump on quickly here with an onboard shot. You can see him run a little bit wide, and it's hard to say. Davison was right up on the back gearbox of Wallace there, so I'm not sure if there was any initial contact, but we'll keep an eye on that from race control to see how that one is deemed. But yeah, it certainly looked like potential for a little bit of a helping hand here. Dave Miller up on screen at the moment, working on the back of Scott Chambers. These guys are scrapping down over the 17th and 18th position on track. Absolutely nothing between it, with a huge slide for Scotty Chambers there.
Yeah, that was a nice save because he's a little bit squirrely on the exit there too. So I wouldn't be surprised if Miller gets a run here. He did get a good exit to pull him to the inside, so he's going to have a look down through Sunset Bend here. The Ferrari driver not making it easy. It's going deep on the brakes to try and defend around the outside, but it's very hard with those bumps there. We'll see what kind of drive he gets around here. Yeah, not enough to get the overlap, so he has to tuck in behind, and he might think about a move into one.
Oh, he nearly gets the nose up into one. That would be a huge move to see that come back through. Scotty with a great save on the exit of turn 15 there, and unfortunately did lose a spot. He's got now Johannes Koch all over him for DPR Racing as well, just behind as you see Miller with a little bit of a wiggle in the rear. So these guys are really starting to have a bit of trouble now with the condition of the tyres at the back end of this race, but some great driving still, not a lot of issue and contact, but some great respect as you see Scott Chambers going very defensive. Johannes actually gets the nose on in front on the run into 7, but not quite able to get that move done. And right behind them, you've got Scott Gamble in the Ford as well. So he's potentially in position here to get up and could almost grab 1 or 2 spots here if these two guys ahead do have some sort of contact.
Yeah, he'll definitely be on the hunt for some positions after that error earlier on. So he'll be head down. He'll be licking his lips at this battle in front, and we see the Ferrari off the track a little bit there. So struggling to keep the car within the bounds of the circuit. So, and the BMW is definitely coming on strong towards the end of the race. Johannes here looking quite good in this battle. And we've got Davison right on the back of Morris for the battle in the top 5. He's as close as he's been, just looking at the timing screen. So looks like it was down to a 10th there at one point, so very close.
Yeah, absolutely nothing between these guys. They're on the run up through 6 out of Big Bend at the moment, working down into 7. So we'll see if we can jump up to them momentarily. We've still got this great forecast scrap on screen with Scotty Gamble, and here we are cutting up to Morris. See the headlights starting to come into effect, and these guys now out of 8, sorry, on the run up into 10, and Morris going very, very defensive. Yeah, Morris still doing a great job holding off. Should be final run through here. Down out of turn 13, as we see Dominic Ferreras, who has basically put together a masterclass. We don't see him in the championship a lot, but at the moment up 4.5 seconds over Craig Edwards, and that's no mean feat in it.
So yeah, there's a few battles to play out on this last lap as we see Ferraris head round Sunset Bend for what we think is the last time. Just on the timing screen there, that battle further back with Hender and Clements. Looks like there was a position change there, but Dominic comes across the line, celebrates another great victory. Edwards was able to hold on. Lattimore 2 seconds back from him, and looks like Morris is just going to hold off Davison there at the end. So they round out the top 5.
Nathan Happett and Jeremy Clark coming across the line, 7th and 8th. Those guys have been pretty well inseparable for the last portion of the race after the pit stop. Dave Clement still working on the back of Brett Hender, Troy Maguire, trying to sneak the nose of the Porsche in on the exit of 17. Not quite going to get that done, but these 3 had a fantastic scrap to finish off the race. It was a great run from those guys. Scotty Chambers trying to go around the outside of Dave Miller. I think Miller might actually get the run here across the line, and does. Miller coming home in
by 100th,
23rd, and Scott Chambers in 20th. So that was a fantastic run for those guys. Aaron Specchio coming across the line in 23rd, and a little bit of trivia for you. We got word from co-commentator Marco Bobinera. Specchio, Italian for Mirror. So we'll might have to double check that with him there. Chris Pallett home in the 24th spot as well for Pulse Racing. So great run from them.
Casey having an issue there on the final lap from the looks of it in the BMW, so I'm not sure what happened there. It could potentially be fuel, but looked like he was quite wide on the exit of Sunset there, so he might have had a moment and hit the wall.
Yeah, we'll keep an eye out for that to see how that unfolded. Another fantastic race in the books here for the AMF series. We'll wait for these guys to come across the line momentarily, and we'll pull up the finishing positions. We see a few of the guys just on their cool-down lap coming home. And as the grid comes up, final positions, Dominic Ferreras taking the win tonight for FT1 Motorsport, ahead of Craig Edwards and Steve Lattimore rounding out the podium. Matt Morris home in 4th, Danny Davis in 5th, Justin Wallace for Race on Oz coming home in 6th tonight, Jeremy Clark in 7th, ahead of Nathan Happetts. Lee Vandenberg, we didn't see a lot of tonight, but had another good, strong, solid result in the 9th position. Richard Hunter comes home in 10th for DPR Race. Michael Kirkham, Martin Crisp in the 11th and 12th position. Brett Hender in 13th tonight. Dave Clement, Sean Maguire not able to get that move done on Hender, home in 14th and 15th. Neil Pearson in 16th tonight. Pat Gallo 17th. Dave Miller just got a sneaky positional change there in the 18th spot. 19th, just behind, you can see 0.005 of a second behind, so absolutely nothing in that was Scott Chambers. Johannes Koch down in the 20th position. Scotty Gamble, 21st. Kenneth Latter in 22nd. Aaron Specchia, 23rd tonight. Chris Pallett in the 24th. Martin Casey down in 5th. Michael Talianchich on his first run out tonight. Comes home in 26th, just ahead of Tim Phoeben and Eric Thorpe, who we saw have a few issues out on track. Stephen Varga in the 29th. And Alex Court coming home in the 30th, 31st, 32nd and 34th, all series admins tonight. So very much thanks to them for continuing great efforts in the comms, the stewarding box, keeping track of everything.
So yeah, another good race with plenty of close battles. Overtaking probably not as easy as we expected. The mistakes were quite minimal given how challenging this track is actually. So I think everyone overall did quite a good job. There wasn't too many things to trouble the stewards with either, which was good.
No, not at all. I think race conditions overall pretty well. We saw some fantastic battles all up and down through the field, and for the couple of times there was a little bit of contact, the guys are pretty good in redressing and getting back on. Just wait for a few of the drivers to jump up here. We'll quickly recap or preview next week. We jump off to Silverstone GP. I think we said that a couple of times throughout the course of the race tonight. 45 minutes on that one. Final race, one mandatory pit stop. And as we go here, we'll bring up race winner, Dominic Ferreras. And he is with Brad Klink.
Hi Dominic, Brad up in the booth here. We believe that's you with your nickname there. Another great drive from yourself, and just able to sort of get away at the start. A really great jump at the start, and then sort of just consistency. A 10th here and a 10th there, building that gap. How was it from your perspective?
Yeah, it was really good. Sort of set off. I didn't expect to pull that big of a gap based off the qualifying times. I only pipped Craig by about half a tenth. But yeah, really in tune with the Ferrari and managed to be consistent all race, and yeah, really happy with the result.
From the onboards during the race, the Ferrari guys did seem to have a relatively stable platform underneath them. The front end looked quite good, and just towards the tail end of the race, we did see a couple other Ferraris back in the field that have been battling, sort of have a couple of issues with tyres, perhaps just the last 5 minutes of the race. But I'm guessing not having to battle too hard, you were able to look after the tyres and didn't have too much trouble with those towards the end.
Yeah, the front end is really stable. However, the reason it's stable is because it's really stiff, which, when I'm trying to extract pace, means that I'm always wearing out that tire. And towards the back end of the race, that did start to creep in a little bit for me. But luckily enough, as you mentioned, I had that gap and I was just able to control it. But yeah, it was a bit of the setup. Yeah, it is very, very stable. However, to get pace out of it, you really do have to work those tires.
And which section of the track here at Sebring do you find is the most challenging or the hardest to maintain consistency over that race distance?
Probably the middle section. So after the really long straight and the hairpin, and then up towards the last back straight. It's just the fine line you got to run to getting the maximum paces. It's really challenging. That's where I was probably struggling the most throughout the race.
Yeah, it's quite a bit of change of direction through that section leading up to Le Mans. So it can be quite demanding on the car balance with the shift of weight from left to right quite a few times through that section. So definitely one of the harder sections of this track. So yeah, once again, congratulations on the result. Again, another win for FT1. Is anyone you'd like to thank before we move on and chat to one of the other drivers?
Yeah, first of all, I'd like to thank, as you mentioned, all my teammates at FT1. Some of our main partners, Demon Tweaks, Fight CRC, Sim Racing Collectibles, and Hybrid Racing Simulations. They're the guys who get it done for me, and yeah, they really do a good job. Thanks for the broadcast as well, guys.
Not a problem, Dominic. And yeah, we hopefully we'll see you out at Silverstone next week. Is that the plan?
Hopefully. I've been a bit on and off this season, and I think I've been doing really well getting those race wins. I think every race except one I've done, but I'm just not able to turn up every round, which is unfortunate. Hopefully that'll change next season. So can't tell you right now, unfortunately.
Yep. Okay, no worries. So we'll keep our eyes peeled for you on the grid next week. Thanks, mate.
Awesome. Thank you.
Was our race winner here at Sebring, Dominic Ferraris, in the Ferrari for FT1 Motorsport. And now I believe Daniel's going to have a chat to Stephen Lattimore.
Yeah, g'day, Steve. Mate, congratulations. Third home tonight. Not too far behind Craig Edwards, main championship rival there. But from your point of view, how were things out there tonight, Sebring in the fourth?
Hey, fellas. Yeah, no, it was good. Good race. The frame rate was dropping a little bit as the sun came down, so that was a bit annoying. But yeah, put it together. Had a good pit stop, made a bit more room on Craig. Or Gavin got up to the back of him, just out of the draft, but definitely good enough to open up the gap to Matt Morris, which was important as well.
Yeah, it looked like maybe both yourself and Craig maybe struggling just a little bit with the Ford tonight, as opposed to what we saw from Dominic out front. Looked like the car maybe a little bit harder to get the most out of tonight. But all in all, I think absolutely fantastic race. We're getting word that the delta between yourself and Craig's come down a little bit more in the point standing. So everything to play for going into to Silverstone next week. But looking forward from Sebring to Silverstone. Anything you can potentially take out of the run tonight? Obviously, we go two completely different track styles with the hard concrete here to a lot more of a traditional flowing circuit in Sebring, but Silverstone. But any thoughts you might be able to get out of the most of this car moving forward to there?
I'm not really too sure. From last season when we done Silverstone and Sebring, I was in the Ferrari, and the Ferrari was really good around both tracks. Hopefully the Ford will be very similar. Whatever I'm doing, Craig can do it as well. So it's going to be quite a good battle between me and him. Then I have to try to up him somehow. Otherwise, they'll probably say goodbye to that number one on the side of my door. But the BMW should also be really, really well around Silverstone with all the trail braking. And yeah, so I can see Danny being up there as well, and whoever else we might end up having Van Gisbergen again. Hopefully not.
Well, yeah, definitely. I mean, we've seen some really strong contenders throughout the course of the field come up. I mean, you got some usual counterparts up there in the likes of Matt Morris, but I think Danny Davison, as you mentioned, one of the big up-and-comers, getting his way up towards that top five and potentially knocking on the door of a podium. So it's great to see the development of some of the younger guys coming through. But before we let you go, mate, and enjoy third and the second to last race of the night. Is there anyone you wanted to give a shout out and a thanks to?
Yeah, Harvey Bay Autoglass, Race on Oz, all the boys over at the forum, all the sponsors over there as well. The guys who showed up tonight and took part, Justin done quite well. Looks like he finished in the top 5. Ken had a little bit of a hard time. Guys in second split. All the boys who decided to go go-kart racing today instead of racing with us. And yeah, AMF for putting it on, and Apex Racing TV for broadcasting it.
Fantastic, Steve. Well, look, mate, again, congratulations on third. We look forward to catching you out next week at Silverstone. Wish you all the best, and we'll hope to see you.
Cheers, fellas.
That was Steve Lattimore coming home third tonight. Fortunately, we didn't see Craig Edwards up in the booth, but to Craig, congratulations, mate. Great job there, and looking forward to seeing how the final championship unfolds. Next week, obviously, we move on to Silverstone. We mentioned a couple of times already. Great circuit to close out the AMF series for another season. It'll be the GP circuit, 45 minutes. Again, same thing as tonight, one mandatory pit stop for fuel. And with the points being as tight as they are, especially up in the top tier and the championship, we're in for some absolutely fantastic racing. To all the sponsors that are helping continue to promote the series and get it out there, massive thank you to you guys, Harvey Bay Autoglass and RMS Race Management Services, rms55.com. Thank you very much for your ongoing continued support in helping AMF become what it is today. For all of us here at Apex, I'd like to thank Brad Clink for coming in last minute to help out. Scott Newton behind the cameras, as always, doing a fantastic job there. My name's Daniel Leet. Thank you again for tuning in, and look forward to seeing you out next week for the AMF season final at Silverstone. Good night, and we'll see you then.